In this video, we're going to be painting up some Gene Stealer cult, as well as having a really great discussion about Age of Sigmar 2.0.
Okay.
Welcome, Wargamers. My name is Doug with 2+ Tough, and this is While You're Reforging, my not quite podcast where I go through a topic and really deep dive into the hobby itself, kind of discussing the nuances of what it is to be a wargamer and things like that. This is an invitation to drag out your brushes and models and paint along with me. In a moment here, I'm going to put the camera down and I'll be painting up some Gene Stealer cult for 40k. But we're actually going to have a discussion about Age of Sigmar. I'll go into it more in a little bit, but this discussion revolves around a topic that was brought up by a great podcast called Rolling Bad. It's a competitive AOS focused podcast. Great guys down in New Mexico, I believe. And they're discussing the topic of Age of Sigmar 2.0. Meaning, what is the next evolution of this game? Not quite second edition, but you know what I mean. I want to give a special mention that I did start an Instagram feed. The discussion is already starting to pour in about really awesome stuff. If you want to follow me, here is the Instagram feed name. You can also find it in the description down below. And there you'll be able to see when I'm doing recordings. I want to have some you folks on the channel for a live WYR reforging. Those kinds of things. Just get involved into what I do in the hobby and just engage with you a little bit better. Pro tip, it is way easier to talk to you guys over there than it is on YouTube, where comments get buried pretty much by the minute. And last little announcement before we dive into the full WYR reforging experience, I did actually get a new sponsor. I reached out to the guys over at 6 Squared Studios who make movement trays and requested them to send over a few samples for me so I could get a sense of them. I move a lot of Marauders and Chaos Warriors and those kinds of things for my battle reports on rerolling ones, and so I wanted to test their product to make sure it was something that I would be interested in kind of offering to you folks. So you're going to see as I transition the camera down, a little bumper for them. Go check out their stuff. It is very, very cool products, high quality, and they're awesome guys with a little shop that I would love to promote. Hey Wargamers, Doug here from 2+ Tough, and I want to share a pain with you that we all understand, and that is moving large hordes of units. Well, in the time it takes for me to move these 40 Marauders, I can tell you about a better way to save time in your games and get the most out of every hobby hour. My friends over at 6 Squared Studios are developing these amazing Mdf Movement Trays that allow you to quickly and easily move and deploy your models during the opening rounds of the game. They come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and configurations, and there's definitely something there to suit your army. They also have these incredible wound counters that I absolutely have fallen in love with. So if you're looking for an inexpensive way to speed up your games and deployment, head on over to 6 Squared Studios. To save you money, they ship domestically to both US and Canada. And if there's something specific that you want, email Kevin over at 6 Squared Studios at the email address down below, and they will make it happen. They love a challenge. Head on over to their website at 6squaredstudios.ca. That's the number 6, squaredstudios.ca. Okay, and we are back. Thank you guys so much for watching that. 6 Squared Studios, I reached out to them and requested them to send over some products. I gave them a list of pretty much what I wanted to test as far as movement stuff goes, and I can tell you they've come in very handy with my personal game. So go ahead, give them a try. They're very cool people. I like working with people. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of brands you can work with, but it's hard to find the right people. Anyone who does any kind of business or marketing would understand exactly what I'm trying to say there. So as far as hobby progress goes, if you're not familiar with the show, I always start off with hobby progress so you know exactly what I'm actually working on. And today I'm working on 10 Acolyte hybrids, I believe they're called, from Gene Stealer Cult. I'm still learning the names of all the units. Sorry, Neophyte. That's right, Neophyte, the human guys. Acolytes are the sort of mutated dudes that are really, really cool. These guys are basically, thematically anyway, the hybridization of Tyranid Gene Stealers and humans. What I'm doing right now is a quick dry brush just to get some brighter colors in there, and then I'm going to give them all a wash of Null Oil to kind of darken down that armor. I start with the armor because it's one of the biggest parts of the model itself, so start there and work down. As far as hobby progress that I have completed, if you are on my Instagram, you will see that I had finished 10 Deepkin Namarti Thralls, and then if you watched the video that went out, well, today at the time of recording, but this week, you'll know that I wasn't really taken by them. I built the first 10 and thought, you know, I'm not gripped to these guys as an army, so I decided to not do Deepkin. And so that's no surprise there. I love the army, has great lore. I loved doing the week of content. It just wasn't for me, so that's why I spent a lot of time doing that. But what I'm going to do is take the purchases that I haven't opened back to GW and just reinvest in more Gene Stealers or Slaves to Darkness Chaos stuff, which I've painted a ton of on this channel, and I always have a blast with them. What I want to do, honestly, is I want to be the champion of Slaves to Darkness. Like, I want to be just Slaves to Darkness guy. I know they have cool models like Sail and things like that, which can pull them pretty far. I don't have a mega competitive meta, you know, at least me and my friends don't. So I'm not terribly worried about getting stomped or anything like that. I think if I learn how to use them very well, then they will do well for me. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at hobby progress-wise. So most of the progress, you know, you can see on Instagram, but like I said, it's not going to be terribly relevant because I'm not going forward with that army. With these guys, though, last week, moving into games played, I played my first ever game with the Gene Stealer Cult, and holy crap, this is a complicated army. This is a puzzle. I can actually say it's probably going to be one of the harder forces I've ever played that I'm going to learn. And the reason is you win or lose at deployment. Like, the second I finished deploying, I realized I made a terrible mistake, and that terrible mistake set the tone for the entire game. So with those highlights done, I'm going to move into some flesh colors. Rakarth flesh for a base. And so, what we played like a sort of open war. We basically just a lot of my gaming friends, we do match play rules, but then open war cards. And so my good buddy Ben, who I actually played my first game of 40k with in general, back when I did the Tzeentch Demons, he was kind enough to give me a good game, and I think he brought roughly 2,000 points of Salamander Space Marines, and I had just a hair under 1,000 of Gene Stealer Cults. And to be honest, it was the single most non-optimized Gene Stealer Cult list ever. It's literally what I own, and then even then, I was kind of adding features just to stretch it to 1,000. So, you know, I don't take anything as indicative of the army by any stretch, but had 2 units of these guys. One of them's the guardsman style, so they had just a bunch of last guns and a missile launcher. These guys had 2 heavy weapons and just a bunch of dudes with shotguns. I went with shotguns because I wanted something that could be a little more aggressive, at least give the perception of a threat that my opponent felt like they had to deal with. So that was kind of their role, and they actually did a great job. And then I just, honestly, the rest of the list was a lot of HQs. They had a Patriarch, 2 Primuses, and a Magos. If you're not familiar with Gene Stealer Cults, that's the big Gene Stealer himself, and then basically a sorcerer and more like a lieutenant type guy. And so, just heroes of varying qualities, but they took up most of my points. We did play roughly points. It was power level. I mean, it's how open war stuff measures things, but we made our list with points. Try to move my workstation up to the center here so you can actually see what I'm doing. As far as the actual game went, the objective was basically that relic one where it's like there's an object in the center of the table. Go get the object and have it by the end of the 5th battle round. And then our twist was that there's 2 objectives, and the second objective was we each place a marker token, and there's one in the center. Whoever has the most at the end of the 5th battle round wins. And all that seemed very difficult because I didn't have the staying power to hold the center objective. I didn't have a lot of the things I thought I needed to get, basically to stay on the board for that long. Because we were playing, he had twice as many points as me, it was open war, but I got a sudden death victory thing. And I was like, okay, this is it. Whatever it is, I'm going to go for this. Go for broke. And the sudden death victory thing was make sure there's no enemies within 9 inches of the center of the board on turn 3. So every single objective at play had to do with the center of the board. And when he had twice as many Marines as me, man, there was no way. I mean, looking back on the game, I think victory was theoretically possible. I did some strange things that, like, the thing I was telling my opponent afterwards, Ben's a great guy, and he's great for those after-game conversations to kind of discuss what you could have done better. And the conclusion that I came to was I could have won the game. I don't feel like it was a non-victory. Like, it was supposed to be a sudden death thing. Like, it was never going to be balanced. But I feel like I could have won it, except that the Gene Stealer deployment rules look different on paper than they do when you're actually setting up models. And by that I mean, it's easy to say in your head, like, well, he's going to pop out of here, and this guy's going to pop out of here. But then when you actually have to, like, you know, choose a unit to put him in the reserves, or Cult Ambush, I think is what it's called. Okay, you do that. Okay, now you have to attach a leader to them. Okay, well, I have so many leaders and so few units. Man, you know what I mean? Like, I have 4 leaders in that list, and it wasn't technically a legal army, but I mean, that many leaders, and then 3 units of troops, 2 of these guys, 1 of the acolytes, and then a tank and a sentinel. You know what I mean? Like, that's my list. It was too leader heavy to really succeed. And then I put the Patriarch on a strange unit. I put the Magus by himself, so he got blasted. I just did strange things because it wasn't translating in my mind. I had to see it on the table to actually understand it, if that makes sense. I think it happens a lot to us. Is like, I think it's going to happen, frankly, with Deepkin, where people are reading the rules, but how broken being able to dictate who your opponent shoots at. And then I really honestly think when it hits the table, it's not going to be as big a deal as people think it is. That's just my opinion. It's whatever. But this guy's a glove on. Okay, cool. Yeah. So started off the game with my units kind of scattered. Another thing I did wrong was the people I put in Cult Ambush, they were just all over the board. They weren't in position to go for that center objective. I wasn't thinking about it. And so when turn 3 came, it wasn't that he was defending it very heavily. It's just I didn't put up enough resistance. So that was on me. But, you know, it's a learning game. I think Ben's committed to trying to get me to stay to 1 army. Which I'm really enjoying these guys. I love their models and stuff. So that likely won't be hard. Especially because I'm getting a little tired of the hobby ADD train. So, yeah, that's basically that for as far as other games. I can't think of a whole lot of other stuff that I played. I took a little bit of time off from AOS because we actually finished our Path to Glory campaign, which I think I talked about in the last WYR Forging. And that was a great deal of fun. I intend to have the crew from Rerolling Ones on the show for WYR Forging to discuss. There's a lot of things we learned about Path to Glory that I think would be of huge benefit to everybody who's trying to do it. There's a lot of people in my comments say, oh, you know, we're getting into the game in my community, starting with Path to Glory, and it's the best way to start, I think. But there were a few pitfalls that we ran into, things that we could have done to give certain players a nudge, maybe ease the throttle on some. Like, we rolled for everything, and in retrospect, like, after my 3rd unit addition, I probably could have just eased off the gas and chose a different path. You know what I mean? Just buffing a unit on the table or something like that. So, a lot of things to learn. I think having those guys on would be hugely popular just because people like them. They're great characters. If you haven't gone and checked them out, head over to Rerolling Ones. It's a battle report channel put out by my good friend Mark and Jack and Brenton. They do a ton of hard work in making battle reports super fun, rather than shaky cam and mumbling, which is what I would do if I did battle reports, which I want to do someday, but we'll get there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for games played as far as I go. I just did 40k. I'm going to be going to do more 40k tomorrow. I don't really have a game planned, so it might be more hit or miss. I tend to like to schedule things because that way my opponent knows what they're getting into. Like, Ben obviously knew it was my first game with these guys. So that little more controlled environment, where education is a priority for everybody. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else I usually talk about on these things. I haven't done a one-on-one wire reforging in some time. I was actually having a lot of trouble with recording software, even with the new rig. It's because I went from Apple to PC and everything's kind of different. Really the problem is that PC is simpler and I was overthinking it. Which Steve Jobs told me this was easy. It doesn't seem easy. And then all of a sudden I go to PC and it's like, oh, it really was that easy. Just hit record. Okay, cool. So moving into the main topic, I was listening to Rolling Bad, which is a Age of Sigmar podcast. I think they're on most podcast catchers, if I'm not mistaken. But they're a fantastic podcast outside of, I believe it's Albuquerque, New Mexico. I know he opens the show every week with like the desolate wastes of, and I think he says New Mexico. And they were talking about Age of Sigmar 2.0. And it's this idea, and I believe there was a live stream, and one of the people on it let slip that there was a phase 2, basically. This is on the Games Workshop stream or whatever. So we know that some changes are coming, and the question really was, are these fundamental changes to the game, like the 4-page rule set, or are they just talking about like massive updates coming from the General's Handbook? And there's a lot of wild speculation. So just to preface, just like on the Rerolling Ones thing when they started off their discussion on the topic, everything we're going to talk about is wild speculation. There's just nothing out there really to corroborate any of this. I'm not a news site, never have been, never want to be. But it's just talk, things that I'd like to see in the game. People do ask me, especially in the WYR reforging questions, which we'll get to in a minute, what I want to see change in the game and things that need to be altered and for balance sake and for fun sake, really. And I have, opinions, and we'll get to those. So, some of the theories floating around were surrounding charges. So in 40k, for example, any unit that charges gets to activate before anything else. So if we'll do a little test here. If these 3 guys charge this huge blob, all 3 of them get to activate before they do. And so the idea being is that something that should port over to AOS. It does, I think, thematically look great when your charging units have quote-unquote the initiative. Like it seems like there's motion involved when they get to activate before anyone else, and I like that. Is that something that should come to AOS? I would be so for it. I can't think of a huge negative to it, and I know that really boosts up units that can charge like great distances. So like your eels from Deepkin, right? Or what's another really fast unit? I'm having a brain fart on fast units, but you know what I mean. Some of the Harpy Girls from Daughters of Cain are very fast. Things that can just jet across the board would obviously get a huge boost, and that'd be awesome. And I would love to see that. So I want to hear your thoughts on everything that I talk about. You just make bullet points, right? I would love to hear people's opinions because the problem is it's a podcast, so I can't see their feedback as a community member. And I fully support them. You should absolutely go over to Rolling Bads and listen to them. That being said, so I'm in full support of that one. Another one that they were talking about was the hero rules. Now, actually, pause. Backing up to the charging one, there was talk that would diminish the value of Deepkin, who can do that. They all attack on turn 3 first, whatever. The thing is that it would still be a boon to be a Deepkin player for that turn because everyone gets to attack even if they didn't charge. So if you made the blanket rule that everyone can attack first if they charged, they would still get initiative and they would be able to attack first. So I think that that would still be a plus to them in terms of kind of their special rules and stuff and keeping them unique, which is important. So as far as, I'm going to do a second coat on these guys. The shooting. Shooting was kind of the bulk of their discussion, I feel like. And it's something that a lot of people I see in the comments of my videos and other videos, people really struggle with. When they come to AOS, the shooting rules are a bit abstract, where all your guys are in combat, and yet they can shoot somebody 18 inches away who's not involved in their fight whatsoever. You'd think they'd be distracted. It would open up the idea of tying up units again, which we haven't seen since Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And there's a lot of discussion about that. Now, I'll be the first to say, I do think shooting needs work in AOS. I think they lost something for the sake of simplicity, where I think what they lost was tactile depth. Tactical depth, not tactile. Tactical depth, where I think it is a good thing that units that are in combat cannot shoot. And I'll put the caveat there that I'm actually okay with them shooting, as long as they have to shoot the thing they're in combat with. I would actually love that. I would love it if archers and things like that could shoot, because that's, that is what their points cost includes. But I wish that they were forced to make a hard choice of, like, do I shoot? If I shoot, I have to shoot at the guy I'm engaged with. And what that does is it gives armies that don't have a lot of shooting, frankly, some options. Because one option could be just throw a sacrifice unit into that shooting unit to tie him up for a turn. And I think options are always good. I think options are king in these games. I think that would be super legit if they made that change. What I don't want is, I don't want to say like it was back in Fantasy, where if you're a unit with a gun and you get booped by a unit of skeletons, that you're just not a shooting unit anymore. You can't really do anything with those bows. It's all combat, because that felt like you're taking away options. To me anyway, it felt like I lost a lot of that unit's value to the point where I didn't want to take it, because I'd rather take something that's more consistent. Which, it might be realistic in the sense of like actual battlefield tactics, but the fact of the matter is, we're trying to sell products and have fun and play games and just enjoy each other. So I think that would be a bummer if we went back to the ways where being in contact just shut you down, basically, in terms of shooting. But I didn't like it when I played Ironjaws and my Cunning Ruck was engaged and it shot something clear across the table. Like, I chose not to do that frequently because it didn't make sense to me, and I'm sorry, what that guy said. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that I had the option, and I didn't like that when I was playing that way, my opponent would be like, oh man, I thought you were going to shoot this guy, and like expecting something to be unthematic. And I was like, no, like when you play me, you should expect a thematic game. Straight up. That's a note for all you listeners who I may or may not ever meet at a convention. Expect the narrative. But, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It never jived with me to be able to shoot out of combat that way. Now, some things, like, I don't want them to have to go back and add keywords and things like that to every war scroll in the game that allows them to shoot out of combat. Like, some units might be able to, whatever. I don't care. I don't want to get that detailed, and I certainly don't want them to have to go back and redo all the war scrolls. That would just be an insurmountable amount of work. Just dry brushing over that gray I did earlier to pick out some more detail. I love the Neophyte models, I gotta tell you guys. I didn't pick them up when they came out. I was really into, I think that even Warhammer Fantasy Battles when the Gene Stealer came out. I don't remember. I was really into something else. I was like, I like that. Put a pin in it. The next thing we're going to talk about with AOS 2.0, somewhat rumors, just discussion, was the idea of being able to hide characters. Now, in 40k, if you're not familiar, you can only shoot at a character if they are the closest model. And there's a bunch of FAQs that complicate that and what that means, and heroes can't block other heroes, and all that jazz. But I mean, fundamentally, the idea is you have to go through the army to get to the hero. Okay, that's just, I think that's the core idea of what they're trying to get at. People try to circumvent and break that rule all the time, but I think that's generally the idea. Does that belong in AOS? Well, that's a complicated question, and thematically, when someone says that to me initially, I'm like, yes. What I'm tired of is reading all these super awesome epic books about like then Vandus Hammerhand walked the battlefield and met Korgus Cole and gave a battle cry to Sigmar, and they engaged in fisticuffs for 4 chapters and all those kinds of crazy things. You know what I mean? And then you go to play that on a tabletop, and Vandus gets shot off the table turn 2. Like, that sucks. It kills my narrative. In our group, we tend to not target heroes. It's not even a spoken rule. We just typically don't until later on in the game. And part of that is because we like the story. We love seeing our heroes achieve things. I leave Jack's Slaughter Priest alone because he doesn't achieve anything and he kills himself. I don't need to, but that's a great story. Hashtag shout out Jack. Oh man, he's gonna get me for that. I'm gonna wait for that text. Anyway, you know what I mean. But should it actually be a rule of the game? Well, it's difficult to say because I do think that heroes in AOS tend to be, I think, relatively cheaper than heroes in 40k. By that I mean you could do something like a 40 or 60 point Garrote Shaman, like that's a hero, and he can be nasty because he can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Especially if/when he gets his own battle tome, like there could be all kinds of BS around that, right? He could be a great unit, so you don't want to give that too much strength in one direction. I think because we do have access to some incredibly cheap heroes in this game, period. So I think that's something to be mindful of. I want there to be some way to keep heroes alive long enough for them to do the epic clashes that we see in the books. Like, just as a narrative guy, I want those things. I know it's easy for people to say, like, well, first of all, when I say that, people are like initially, oh, well, get good, just don't have your guy out in the open. Like, well, it's not easy sometimes. And I get that completely. On the flip side, if you can't snipe out certain heroes, like if you really honestly can never even touch the Khorne banner guy, he's going to mess up your day, right? Like, stocking him just skyrockets more so than it already is for every Khorne player. And that's nuts, and that's hard to deal with, and it's hard to balance, where heroes and key pieces are so vital to the way armies function that it gets difficult to even imagine them being boosted like that. And so I get that. Now in 40k there is, I will put the caveat, if you're not familiar with it, there's a certain wounds threshold that, like, I think isn't it 10? If it has 10 or more wounds, I'll leave it in the notes if you know the answer. I believe it's 10. I just started playing 40k, as you can see by my unpainted models. Where if it's bigger than that, then it doesn't gain that benefit. Like if a big huger, like a big Tyranid monster guy is in lead, he can be shot at from clear across the board. And they typically, when they're that big, they have alternate means of defense, like reroll saves, or the Nurgle guys get the disgustingly resilient, those kinds of things. But as far as applying that to AOS stuff, man, it'd be a tough balance. It would be maybe if it was like a special keyword or something added to certain heroes. It just seems hard to make it a blanket rule without really ruining some people's days. I mean, Cornstalk would just skyrocket. Which, now that I say it out loud, is a funny sentence. And I think, but I actually don't think that would be bad. I don't think we have enough Khorne players. I love Blades of Khorne, and if Jack wasn't playing him right now, that's what I would be doing. But I want to hear your thoughts about that. So what do you think about the way the rule kind of works? Is like if this guy is shooting at this hero, the hero has to be the closest model to shoot at him. Obviously, if you have this guy hiding behind this thing, even though he can only see the hero, he still can't shoot him because this guy is technically closer. It's kind of a mess. That's the problem, is like when you add that rule, you don't just add the rule, you don't add the thematic thing that I want, which is like, keep your heroes safe so they can punch each other's face. You add the plethora of asterisks to clarify the rule and make sure that game folks don't game it and break it and the rest of us have a bad time. And that's fair. I mean, the rules should be clear enough to where everyone could have a great time, and I don't begrudge or begrudging tournament gamers for ruining everything. I think that's a mistake. But I mean, it invites a host of clarifying problems and exceptions and all those kinds of things, and that's what I really don't want. Is I don't want to have 40k level FAQ problems like they're going through right now. So I'm on the fence about that one. I'd love to hear more opinions to sway me either which way. I like it in theory, and I think that's what they kind of intended. Was keeping heroes alive so that they make a difference on the battlefield, and I want them specifically to get into combat with each other, because I think that is uber thematic. But I also see just the logistical nightmare of doing that, or like making blanket rules like that now that we're this far into the system. Because if you stack, for example, like the Deepkin rules of, you can only shoot the closest model, and you stack that with the hero rule, the hero shooting rule from 40k, it gets even worse, because then if the closest model is something they can't see or they've hidden it around terrain, it makes a lot of weird interactions I don't think would be very fun. And fundamentally, like when you're talking about game design, that's what you're talking about. The word fun, right? I mean, it has to be clear so that there's no arguments. But at the end of the day, it also just needs to be fun. And I'm not sure if that would deliver that same level of fun to AOS. But man, I think there needs to be something. And I think it would go a long way to thematic games. So if you're watching at home, just doing a little acolyte. I'm doing a purple tabard on all of them, and then just doing a purple stripe on the shoulder pads. And the leader's going to have a full purple shoulder pad, just to denote them, make the markings look a little different. I think these guys are fairly drab in terms of it's like mining equipment they're wearing, so it's not going to be super bright and colorful. Which I think makes sense, and I'm super cool with that. This guy has no shoulder pads or tabard. Okay, put him to the side and think about what I want to do there. Yeah, and so I'm trying to think of anything else that they had talked about specifically. They spent a lot of time talking about the shooting one, and I think that was definitely the meat of the conversation, because I think it's the most realistic expectation from changes, right? I think the game is at a good place right now, and I don't think we're going to see anything drastic. What I think the game needs is minor nudges in the right direction. And a minor nudge would be, you can shoot, but only the person you're engaged with. It has obviously big ramifications, but it's not the end of the world type thing. You know what I mean? I think that's super important, is that I think the game is in a great place balance-wise. I think everyone has the option to build really fun lists. I think the community team over at Warhammer or Games Workshop is really listening and being very attentive and careful, and I think that's great. And I think all those things are recipes for a healthy game environment. And whatever changes they make, I'll be on board with, because they see more data than I do to back those decisions up. Point is, I think what we're calling AOS 2.0 is either going to be, I don't think it's going to be as drastic as people are looking at it to be. I think it'll likely be just a large update in GHB as far as match play goes. I do notice, however, that many battle tomes, specifically since I think GHB 2017, have stopped including the 4-page rulebook. So if they are going to make changes, they have the most recent material that won't be invalid because of it, and that's kind of interesting to ponder. But beyond that, I don't know. I can't say for sure. I can't imagine without, like, they're not going to go back to to hit into wounds stats that like strength and toughness. They're not going to go that far backward. Nothing like that. Nothing where it's fundamental game design that invalidates entire swaths of battle tomes or anything like that. I think it's just going to be nudges in the right direction, and that's exactly what we need. As far as things that I would like, this is the kind of section where I get to go hog wild. What I would love, honestly, is if they incorporated the Malign Portent's portent rules into the game for everyone. Now, if you're not familiar, I went over this in a brief review I did. I'm actually going to do a full review of the book, and not a review per se, but thoughts on why I think it's an important book. I think that was the smartest decision they've made. Basically, how it works is every army beforehand picks a different set of portents, okay? These are like visions and dreams and all kinds of weird crap. And it works the same way as if you play 40k, picking your stratagem list. In 40k, like, your army gets one. In AOS, you would get a choice. I think there's like 6 different portent charts, basically, and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of similar if you played Fantasy Battles to picking your spell lore. You pick the lore, and then there's a bunch of spells in there you can pick which ones you use throughout the game. Not terribly complicated. Okay, so the magic of editing, I decided to stop talking about the cards and actually go get them. Basically, in this huge deck that you buy for Malign Portents, there are several sets of portents. This one's called the Riding Serpent. Within the Riding Serpent, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abilities. And each one of them has a brief description of what's going on, meaning the actual portent. So this one is Malignance Made Manifest. It has a little fluff piece where it says, the bite of the writhing serpent is synonymous with venom. Those who know of its strength can curse the wounds of a nearby foe so they gush blood. That sounds super baller, right? Okay, I'm on board so far. For example, this is just one random card that I pulled up. Interpret this in your hero phase. Pick an enemy hero within 6 inches of the interpreter. Roll a number of dice equal to the number of wounds that are currently allocated to that model. For each 6+, that model suffers 1 mortal wound. This sign costs 3 prophecy points, or 5 if the target is an enemy monster hero. And has a variable cost, 3/5 prophecy points. To put this really simply, at the beginning of your game, at each turn phase, so when you would roll off to see who goes first, whatever, you also roll a d6, and that is how many prophecy points that you get for that turn, okay? In 40k, you build your list, and that's how many, it dictates how many control points you get, which is kind of the prophecy points equivalent. And that's the resource you have for the entire game. Well, in AOS, with Malign Portents, that resource replenishes and disappears every turn. When you roll that die, that's how many you have for the turn. And that's amazing, because what it means is, 1, you always know more is going to be there, but 2, you don't know how much. So you got to use all the prophecy points that you can as soon as you get them, and try to use them wisely. And I love that aspect of it. Love it, love it, love it. In addition to that, in addition to your D6, you get bonuses based on if you took one of the Malign Portents prophets, so the Dark Oath Working, the little goblin dude, the Grot, I'm sorry, or the Lord Ordinator, or whatever his name was. You know, all those, like, the specialty heroes. You get bonuses for taking them. You get bonuses for playing the Realm of Death. You get bonuses for if you have a priest, I think, or something like that. A priest or a wizard, I believe. And each one of those gets you extra prophecy points. So you need D6 plus blank. And that's pretty legit. So the reason I think that mechanic would be the greatest thing to happen to AOS is frankly for a few reasons. One, this is the biggest one, okay? If you're going to take nothing away from my claims, it gives armies that don't have any support from GW something, okay? Give me an example. On Rerolling Ones, the very first episode was my buddy Mark's Minotaur army. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Okay, it's the Warherd section of the AOS app, whatever, where it's the big Bulgors and Minotaurs and all those crazy things, and they look stunning. He put so much work into that army. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite things. The problem is there's no support for Warherd whatsoever. And frankly, I don't know if there's going to be anytime soon. It's super niche. It's kind of a hipster army. Mark knows that. He loves them. And we love them. We all love Mark. Okay? So with all that out of the way, the thing is that he, even though he doesn't have a battle tome, he has options. Because in that same, let me get that same list here, the Riding Serpent one. Let me briefly go over that. Let's say he picked this one. He has the one that basically allows him to possibly do extra damage to a hero that he's already hurt, meaning has venom on the blade. This one, Dazzling Insight, subtract 1 from hit rolls for enemy units while they are within 9 inches of the Interpreter. That's huge. His Bulgors can't take a hit, so if he has that, his Interpreter guy could be any hero, just so you know. He puts his leader guy behind them, buffs them, -1 to hit is huge for that army. Interpret this on your opponent's charge phase. Immediately after they make a charge roll for that unit, it is wholly with... Immediately... Okay, so when your opponent rolls a charge die and they're in 18 inches, they have to re-roll the charges. This one screwed me over super hard when I was playing Tzeentch, Disciples of Tzeentch, but with like the mortal stuff, because I made a long bomb charge with a 12 for my Marauders, and he made me re-roll it. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, Jack, shout out again. Hashtag Jack's bad. So that's an option. This one allows you to add 1 to hit rolls for a unit in 18 inches if it had 1 or more wounds allocated to it that turn. So meaning your opponent hits you and then you hit them back. If you use this, when you hit them back, you get +1 to hit rolls. Massive when your Bulgors hit on like 4s or something ridiculous like that. My point is, I'm not going to go through all these. My point is, he has 6 options just by chasing this that he didn't have before. And it didn't cost him anything except for the cards in the deck. And that's what I mean is, you talk about free guild players who get no support, or Skaven guys, all those people who just want a little love from GW. This is the way that you can give love, right? It's just simplest thing. It's the product they already have. I know some tournament, I think it's the South Coast GT, is going to be using them. And people are like, I don't want to have to buy another product just to play this game. You want to buy it because it is the best way to play Age of Sigmar when everyone has a chance to do fun things. Like, they're just fun. Now, I will tell you with my importance, if they did make them part of the game, you're going to want to buy the cards, obviously. But in addition to that, you're going to want to read the heck out of them before you ever put them on the table, because what really sucks and is very cumbersome is when every single phase, because these are all, they tell you exactly what phase it goes on, and if it's your phase, your opponent's, or it works in either, it'll tell you every detail. The problem is when you're reading cards rather than playing a game, it slows things down. Sorry, I got very animated there for a second. I'm very excited about my importance. If you couldn't tell. But you know what I mean? Like, I think that is huge for all the armies that they can't get to in a reasonable way, or just choose not to, frankly. I think there's a lot of armies that need love more than Deepkin needed to come out. But, you know, for all those factions, just let them have access to this, and they'll have something to use. Something that requires tactical thought that's outside of their war scroll would be massive for some of these guys. I think, you know, Mark's Bulgors are a perfect example of that, but there's tons of other ones. I mean, the death stuff isn't in such a bad place anymore. But certainly, like, if you wanted to do pure Night Haunt, this would be a huge bonus for you. Totally. Or Flesh Eater Courts, you know, death stuff that kind of got passed by the wayside a little bit. I'm not going to list all the armies that would benefit from that. I mean, literally everyone would benefit from it in some capacity. I think that's important to recognize. But the thing is, I think it was largely a release that fizzled for a lot of people. I don't think it connected with everybody. I think people were pumped for the marketing they did. I think they did a great job with the countdown and all that stuff like that, and people had mixed thoughts on the countdown when it ended and there wasn't a ton to do and the site crashed. But, I mean, that's life, that's marketing, they learn. But I think that the potential of what they actually put the work in to do has a chance to make AOS amazing. Like, more than great, like I think it is now. Because what that does is, it doesn't change any structural integrity of the game. I think if you did the malign portents rules plus some additions to shooting, you would be set for a long while. I think that would have massive ramifications in the game. And people who, even factions who are already winning all the time and players who are already winning all the time, they don't lose or gain much. You know what I mean? Like, they're always going to be top of the castle. Sorry, I'm getting a little detail here. Hold my breath. But I just think that it would add so much to the entire game as a whole that any kind of change like that would be absolutely worth it. So that, like, in a nutshell, that's what I want to see. I want to see changes to shooting, and I want to see malign portents brought in a meaningful way. And I would love to hear if you have experiences with malign portents. I want to hear about them, because the only times that I've seen people really talk about it was during the actual official campaign season. And then people largely forgot about it, and that's a shame, because the actual additions that those cards bring are massive, and they just include options for so many people. I think about all those people who message me, do a video on Moonclan Grots. Man, I want to. I do. There's no information. I have, you know what I mean? There's even less than Skaven. And I can't convey how much I want to do those things, but there's no information out there. Because those people feel forgotten, and they feel left out, and that sucks. You know what I mean? For people who, especially those folks who have, really truly stayed loyal throughout all the changes, and they have those models, and I love Grots. There are people who just love Grots and Skaven, and they're just always going to love them. And what this does is it gives them something. New ways to play their games and have fun and scheme and things like that. I think it has some pretty massive pros over 40k. The fact that they disappear every turn, and you have to really be smart with that resource, and you know what I mean? Under this mix of, it's finite for this turn, but it's infinite in the sense of, I will get more next turn. Do you gain for it? Do you include priests and wizards to make that a bigger chunk of your army in the strategy? Do you not do that? Do you largely ignore it unless it suddenly becomes painfully relevant? There's just design space there that I think has massive potential. And I don't know. I think it was just a sadly underrated product when it came out, and I don't want to say I contributed to it, because I didn't have a chance to talk about it very much. I had a lot going on, but I wanted to do a video about it pretty soon here, and just talking about it was a home run that no one cheered for when GW put it out, and I think that is a bummer, because their design team deserves super praise for that. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that when the South Coast GT, I think that was the tournament that said they were going to do it. I'm not 100% sure. Don't hold me to it. But whatever tournament was going to do it does it, I would love to see the results and see how people thought about it. So, well, friends, about halfway through this unit. I think about halfway. I'm going to call it about halfway. I thank you so much. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think about the rumors currently going out there about AOS 2.0 with kind of additions from stealing from 40k, bringing them over? And then what do you think about my thoughts about malign portents? I think that it would be a great addition. I want to hear some counterpoints. Tell me what you think. Assume for a minute that they're not just making you buy another product. If these cards were somehow integrated in the next General's Handbook, you know what I mean? Don't think about it in terms of purchasing more crap. Think about it in terms of game design perspective. So tell me about that. I would love to hear your thoughts. And friends, I look forward to seeing you on the next While You're Reforging, and then Monday after that for another lore video. So thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want to introduce you to some awesome folks. These are my patrons over on Patreon, and they make this show possible by their direct support of me to buy battle tomes and Black Library books and all the material I need and the hardware support that I need to make this stuff possible. And if you'd like to join them, go ahead and click over to the Patreon page, to the link in the description down below, and you'll be introduced to a really awesome community of people talking about the hobby, sharing what they're painting. I invite them to be a part of polls to decide what content comes next. I raffle off every battle tome that I review, and we're having some great fun and discussions over there. So go ahead and check it out. Now, if you can't support in that way, that's completely fine. I'm just so glad that you watched this video here today. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question, go ahead and click subscribe and leave it in the comments down below. I read every single question and comment. I respond to as many as I possibly can, but I use them all as inspiration for future videos. So go ahead and do that now. And I look forward to seeing you guys on my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.